Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor, the podcast. I'm your host, Danielle.
And I'm Kayla.
And this week we are discussing the importance of trust in friendship. Kayla, why don't you walk us through some of the questions we're going to be exploring this week?
Yeah, so some of the things that we're covering in this episode is, why is trust essential for forming strong, healthy friendships? And how can you cultivate trust in your own friendships? And the reason why this is important is because trust really lays the foundation for all your relationships. No relationship is going to be fruitful or meaningful or even last without trust.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to dive into that today.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be a good one. Not that we have a ton of options to choose from because this is only our second episode, but I have a good feeling about this one. But so basically, what exactly is trust? We're going to answer what trust is and why does it matter. Trust is the belief that someone will act in your best interest and not intentionally cause you harm. I think that there's a lot of gray area when people discuss trust and like what it means to them, but at its heart of hearts, it really is, who do you think will act in your best interest and who's not going to harm you, who's not going to spread information about you or talk about you behind your back and that kind of stuff. When you trust your friend, you believe in their reliability, their honesty, and their integrity, and you feel safe and comfortable confiding in them and sharing personal information, whether that's quote unquote secrets, like if you got information that you don't want getting out but you need to confide in someone, or you got a hope or a dream or something like that, you know that you can confide in that person and that personal information is not going to get out. Trust allows you to be vulnerable and authentic, which is super crucial for building those meaningful connections that we're always talking about.
Okay, so we're going to work through some examples of trust found in friendships. So the first one is keeping each other's secrets.
Yeah.
And I say secrets with air quotes here if you're listening on the podcast, because it may look different for everyone. So definitely as a preteen or teenager, secrets was like, ooh, who's your crush? Or what did she say?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was gossip. I'm ashamed to say gossip.
But even at that age, all those things seem incredibly important, whereas now they seem very inconsequential.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So as an adult, we share different kinds of secrets, but we don't necessarily call them secrets, but it's something that we know that we're not supposed to share. So like being vulnerable and sharing your insecurities with your friends, future plans that you're not ready to share with the world yet,
Mm-hmm.
or something about someone else that you don't want shared. And that not gossip, I mean something that happened to you that someone else said to you or did to you, or whatever, that you're sharing with your friend about how it made you feel, and you don't want that shared with the world. So
that is a super good example. I was just having a conversation with someone a couple days ago, and they were absolutely laying out a situation that had happened to them that I was like, they didn't say, don't tell anybody, but the very tone of the conversation and the information that was being shared was like, okay, this will never cross my lips. Like they were telling me something that they were dealing with in confidence, and they didn't have to expressly say, don't tell anybody, but it was so obvious, like that is not something
because
that
there's trust there.
Exactly. And if I had turned around and chosen to tell somebody, that would be the definition of gossip.
Yes.
Yeah. So usually when you think of the word trust, you think of someone telling someone something else you had told them in confidence. Oh, you broke my trust or whatever. Again, there's a big difference between like childhood trust and adult trust. When you confide in a friend and share personal information, you trust that they're going to keep your secret safe. Again, we use that term loosely, secrets, and not tell anybody else. the interesting thing about this, and it's kind of tough because you want to always say, don't tell anybody this. But the interesting thing about confidence is that there's usually, not all the time, but usually, typically, there will always be someone else in that person's life who has equal or greater confidence to the person you are sharing it with. If I told somebody something and I was like, don't tell them, or don't tell anybody, and then they turned around and told their best friend, well, because they have equal or greater confidence in that other person, and so they trust that it won't go any farther than the person they told. So if I tell someone something, there is a chance that they will in turn confide my, quote unquote secret to someone else that they trust the same amount or more, thinking it would go no
Right.
further. And then it could be passed on to someone else who's got equal or greater confidence. And then eventually you're like 10 people down the line, all the ones trusting the next person and not to not tell the person. And it could get to the point where it circled all the way back to you that
Yes. Yeah.
something you told went through
Mm-hmm.
person A through G, and then it came right back around to A because of that trust circle and that confidence ladder and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you definitely learned your lesson being both people in the situation. So the person that did the sharing, and then the person who, well, I guess they both do the sharing. So the person that initially did the sharing, and then the
Uh-huh.
person who did the secondhand sharing,
Yeah.
you learn your lesson being both people. And I've been
Hmm.
both people in that situation.
Yeah,
So
me too.
yeah, that's why it's a good idea to only share those kind of vulnerable things or secrets with people in your top two tiers of the friendship pyramid.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think, like, oh, they're my good friend, like we're very good friends and I know that I can trust them, they also trust other people. And if it's a
Yes.
good enough piece of information or something that is worrisome to them or whatever, as soon as the second you open your mouth, you need to be okay with whatever you say that's coming out of your mouth being heard by other ears, because there's no guarantee that
Yeah.
cycle of confidence will not loop around to other people that you would normally not be the first-hand share of that information with. So it's just extremely important to have actual provable vital trust in your friends and be careful what you share. That's really what it comes down to. Our second example of trust, being reliable. If you make plans with a friend, you trust that they will show up on time and not cancel at the last minute. And we
I've been
always want to be
guilty of
careful.
this.
We always want to be careful to stress that, of course, there's situations where you have to cancel, and we're never painting
Yeah.
with a broad brush here and saying you're a bad friend and you can't be trusted if you have to cancel due to a situation. But
Right.
if it's a serious issue or whatever. But Kayla, why don't you talk about your experience with
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a conversation worth having with your friends, but you do have to consider their circumstances. So, I mean, are they consistently late to everything? And why are they consistently late to everything? Do they just not manage their time well? Or is there always something inconvenient that happens to them? Because I do have a friend that this is truly the case with her. She manages her time well, but there's always something bad that happens to her. Like she'll FaceTime 5 minutes late, she'll FaceTime, I just got two flat tires and all. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but
Yeah.
I'm like, why does this always happen to you?
Hmm.
My sister and I used to be polar opposites. I've gotten much, much better since I've been married to an extremely punctual person.
Hmm.
But my sister and I used to be opposites. She's like the minute by minute spreadsheet person with everything. And I used to be just always 5 to 10 minutes late.
I
And it
always
really
think it,
drove a wedge between us.
I was thinking about that timeline for your wedding. On the invitation, it said we're starting at 3, but her spreadsheet said 3:12.
And we started at 3:12.
It was
We really
3:12.
did. And that was the plan.
I was wearing a watch. For that, and I was checking. I was like 3:11, 3:12. Okay, the music started. Let's
Yep.
go.
Yeah. And her wedding started at 6:07 on the spreadsheet, and it started at 6:07 in real life.
That is
So,
hilarious.
yes.
Well, it's good to know that there's people who really love to be reliable and consistent, but consistently showing up and being reliable is an essential part of building trust in a friendship. I had dinner plans with a friend just a couple weeks ago. Oh, this I still cringe when I think about this, but we were supposed to meet at 5:30 and I woke up at 5:34. Okay.
It's terrible.
That is not my nature. That
No,
I
it's
don't know
not.
that that's ever happened to me before, but I felt so horrible. I had just started a new job and it was really taking a toll on me. And so I got home from work to take a nap, set a timer, apparently turned off the timer. I don't know. It was horrible. So I raced to the restaurant, got there like
That
20
is
minutes late. I felt so terrible. She was really cool about it. But I know like
yeah.
it's still like even if she was not bothered at all, it bothered me, that I could
Oh,
not be
yeah.
reliable.
Absolutely.
And I want to be known as a reliable person. Like if
Yeah.
I say something, if I commit to something, I want people to trust that I will be true to my word. So I made a promise to myself
Yeah.
next time I have dinner with her, I will show up 20 minutes early to the restaurant and I will not be taking a nap because again, that is not me, but yeah, that I felt
Oh,
so
make you
bad.
guys a table.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like racing across town, but yeah. So,
Oh, terrible.
all right, let's go on to number three. Our third example of trust is honesty. Honesty. Friends should be able to be honest with each other even when it's difficult. And we touched on this a little bit last week about friends always having to agree and that kind of thing. You don't have to always agree. If your friend asks your opinion, you trust that they will value your input and take it into consideration, even if it's not what they want to hear. Because we talked about, like, we used the same example last week, but having your opinion come out of their mouth, even if it's not what they want to hear, they'll at least value what you have to say.
Yes, absolutely. And there are ways to be honest with your friends and do it kindly.
Absolutely. You don't always have to agree, but you should have the trust in each other to be honest and respect each other's input, whether you take it or not.
We recently did an Instagram post on this idea of respecting your friends' values and opinions, but you don't always have to agree. And when you show your friend that you respect them and you're hearing them, you understand them, more times than not, your friend is probably seeking your understanding and not your approval.
Yeah. There's different types of opinions, right? There's like, or I guess situations that require or where you're asking for an opinion. If you're asking for an opinion about an outfit, and if you don't like their suggestion, you don't have to take their suggestion. But if you're
Yeah.
asking for, advice on a situation, it's gonna be a different type of conversation that you have. And if you consistently reject what they're giving you, you have no longer are trusting what they have to say and you're
Yeah.
showing that you don't trust them. You don't always have to take their advice. I'm not saying that you do, but if it's like you ask them all the time for their opinion and then you reject their advice all the time, they're going to stop giving it. You're going to lose out on a confidant if you just don't express why you're not taking their opinion instead of just like fully rejecting all the time.
Okay, number 4 is supporting each other. So, trust in a friendship means knowing that your friend has your back and they'll support you through both the good times and bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes you'll need a shoulder to cry on, and your friend should be there for that. Sometimes you'll need a cheering squad during a big life event, and your friend should be there for that too.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a dream, your friend should have nice things to say and they should be encouraging.
Yeah, even if they don't think it's a good idea, they should be able to trust that they can tell you the truth and not let you go astray. Um, in most situations, your dreams are supportable. And I personally am super grateful to have a village around me that supports me in Friendeavor. But I know that every idea I come up with for this platform is not going to be a winner. And I need to trust that the people in my village will be able to guide me in the not great decisions or whatever.
Yes.
But you don't quite understand how much people support means to you when it feels like you're all alone on an island. So trust means supporting each other, but supporting each other also means helping bring their dreams to pass. No, you don't have to be their employee. No, you don't have to jump on every bandwagon. No, you don't have to do anything. But even a simple offer of help goes so far in building the trust and building a bond that's like, hey, my dreams are important to them. Even if it's not their passion, just by saying, hey, is there anything I can do to help? Small, large, whatever, it really sets the tone on your journey of supporting each other in your life.
So the last one here is respecting boundaries. And it's kind of fitting that this is directly after the last one, supporting each other, because you can easily, when you're trying to support your friend, cross a boundary. And an example of that might look like pushing them to do things that they're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it's respecting a friend's privacy or pressuring them to do something that they don't want to do, respecting boundaries is so essential, and it's a part of building trust in a friendship. So, your friends shouldn't feel mocked or awkward for something they share with you, but they also shouldn't feel like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have shared that because, you know, they're trying to pressure me to do XYZ. And that's not really the path I want to go with this. I
Absolutely.
definitely have people in my life that when I share things with them, they try to offer all these solutions and they're trying to help and they're trying to just like hop on the bandwagon. But sometimes it like kind of scares me.
Mm-hmm. The mocked or awkward thing is so true because it's like, and you see this a lot in media portrayals of like high schools, the peer pressure thing, like, oh, try a drink, we're holding we're throwing a party and our parents aren't home. So, and then when they don't do it, when they hold their ground, they're mocked, like, oh yeah, go do two-shoes, whatever. Obviously, that is a media portrayal that you see a lot, especially in like the 90s and early 2000s and stuff. But if somebody doesn't want to do something and it's totally like you think it's completely normal, like why everyone else is doing it and it's not bad, it's not like we're sinning or doing something, whatever, and it's just us girls, we're just in private or whatever, they set that boundary for themselves.
Right.
And who are you to break their trust and mock them, especially in front of people, or make it an awkward situation just because you might feel, okay, well maybe I'm doing something bad because they won't do it. It's personal boundaries.
Right.
It's what everyone wants to do. So part of that trust is just respecting the boundary that your friend has set in the hopes that
Right.
they too will respect the boundary that you have set when the time comes.
And you want to be mindful on the other side of that. So when you're the one doing the pressuring, why? Why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not directly inconveniencing you that your friend doesn't want to do this thing, then just let it go.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is born out of just like, oh, if they don't do it, then that means I'm doing something wrong.
Mm,
And it doesn't have to be that way, but if you do feel that way, then maybe you should do an introspection just to see, okay, maybe I am doing something wrong. You don't have to feel bad, but just double check your spirit. And then if
yeah,
you're like, no, this is fine, then be okay with them not doing it and you be okay with you doing it,
right,
whatever it may be. So we went through 5 examples of trust. Without trust, friendship can quickly become shallow and superficial. Both individuals may feel guarded and unable to be themselves around each other, which is so draining. Like if you have to put on a
right,
front all the time around people, you're going to feel emotionally drained and your relationship will fizzle out with that person before you even have a chance to see if you can make anything of it.
right. And if you find yourself in a situation where you don't feel that there's trust there, ask yourself, why am I continuing this friendship? I mean, you can decide to discontinue it. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, you don't have to end on bad terms, or you can decide to be like, hey, we need to have a conversation about trust because I want to maintain this friendship.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to feel drained or walking on eggshells every time you're with someone you don't trust.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Because when you don't trust someone, you may hesitate to share your true thoughts and your feelings, which will lead to misunderstandings, distance between friends. You could have people taking sides in a friendship, especially in a friend group. Lack of
Absolutely.
trust leads to those feelings of insecurity, suspicion, doubt, which will just absolutely erode your bonds of friendship over time. And it won't take much time. It'll take, you know, a few instances of broken trust to to absolutely destroy a friendship. But
Yep.
in contrast, when there is trust in a friendship, there's a sense of mutual respect. And you've got that
Yes.
understanding and you've got that support. And trust enables friends to communicate again, open and honestly, and to rely on each other during difficult times.
Yeah, this creates a sense of closeness and connection, which is super essential in any fulfilling or fruitful friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So, question: how can you cultivate trust in your own friendships?
Well, one of the best ways to build trust is just to be consistent, be reliable in your actions, in your conversations. Like the next time I make dinner plans with a person that I made 20 minutes, like I said, I will probably be there 20 minutes early
Yeah,
because I
hold
don't
yourself
like,
accountable.
exactly, I don't like feeling bad. Like I don't like feeling bad that I broke that person's trust. Obviously, it wasn't a
Yeah.
huge breach of trust, but I was unreliable. And so, and I never ever again want to make her think, not that she did think this, I don't know if she did, but make her think that her time is worth less than mine, right? Like it
Mm.
doesn't matter if you are at the restaurant waiting, I'm going to sleep. What is that? And I could have been overthinking it, but again, I felt
Yeah.
so bad. So show up for your friends when you say that you will, keep your promises, be there for them, good and bad times. Be transparent in your communication, even when it's difficult. You
Yeah.
will hit bumps in your road of the friendship with transparent communication. That's really what open and honest communication is. It's just
Yeah.
creating a safe space to have difficult conversations. Um, will be the building blocks of the trust of your relationship.
And we may end up doing a whole episode on this, but vulnerability is really important with your friendships. Not that you have to share every single thing you ever think, but it really opens the door to connection. And it can be difficult to be vulnerable for sure. I definitely have a slight fear of vulnerability, but I find that when I am vulnerable, it just opens this beautiful door
Mm-hmm.
in my relationships.
So we will probably do, you're right, an episode on this, but while we're here, what is the difference for you? What is the difference between vulnerability for the sake of friendship building and vulnerability for the sense of attention seeking? And I know that's kind of a loaded
Mm,
question, but and I've done videos while you're thinking about a response. I'll just give you this little like insight or whatever. I've done videos in the past about these kinds of conversations, and I feel like I use very vague terminology because not every situation fits every friend group, but it's also like there should be some like understandings, right? So like some do's and don'ts of this kind of stuff that we should be able to classify. So to you,
yeah.
what does it mean to be vulnerable in the sense of building trust?
Yeah. I think there are definitely situations where you're being vulnerable um, for the sake of seeking attention. So you want to make the conversation interesting. And so you share this whole woe is me story with all these tears. And sometimes it really is just to feel validated or for attention. Um, but on the flip side, being vulnerable for the sake of connection might look like, um, man, every time my friends bring this up, that's really, for lack of a better word, triggering for me. And it makes me feel this way. But I'm a little bit ashamed of that. And I don't want to share that with them. But your friendship will not flourish if you're constantly having these feelings of, oh man, that doesn't make me feel good when they say that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think sharing things like that with your friends, like, hey guys, I don't love this, but here's a fun fact about me. So if you just be a little bit mindful of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I can see that because we know that it's essential to respect the boundaries and the privacies for your friend. So if that means having a conversation about whatever that, again, air quote, triggering thing is for you, that will help to avoid maybe arguments or awkward situations and prevent the erosion of your trust and your friendship. When we talked about earlier about how we loosely use the term secrets because as you become an adult, you have less secrety things that you discuss with your friends,
Yeah.
but essentially don't share their personal information without their consent. And
Yeah.
don't pry into their personal life if they don't feel comfortable sharing. You'd think, oh, what's yours is mine and mine is yours. We're best friends. But there's parts of people's lives that they don't want to share with anybody
Yeah.
outside of the top tier of their pyramid, the spouse. And if they're not married, then they just don't want to share in general. So
Yeah.
respecting your friends' boundaries show that you value and respect their autonomy.
A good rule of thumb might be, I just thought about this. Don't go seeking information about your friend if they haven't shared it with you, because
Mm,
chances are, if they
good.
haven't shared it with you, they probably don't want to, or they're not ready to, and they might at
Mm-hmm.
some point, and they might not. But like looking over their shoulder at their phone, opening their journal I mean, that's kind
Oof,
of extreme, but don't go out of your way to find out information about your friend if they haven't shared it with you.
absolutely. Yeah. And if you heard it from a third party, you don't ask them to confirm or deny it. It's not your business. If they want to bring it up to you, they'll bring it up to you. But it's that would just put a strain where there didn't need to be a strain.
Yeah.
Even if you're pretty sure they wouldn't care if you shared something about them or would be willing to volunteer them for something. I know we see that a lot in church work, like, oh, I'm sure this person would be a great fit for this. Why don't you ask them? Okay, why don't you ask your friend first if they're comfortable even being volunteered for this? Because even if you are like 99.9% positive that you are absolutely sure that they would not mind, a quick text would reinforce that trust factor in your relationship. Hey, do you have so and so's phone number? Before you send it, text the person, hey, do you mind if I share your phone number with this person? It's like, it's not a big deal. No, but it shows, hey, I'm thinking about you and I'm thinking about
Right.
you might have a reason you don't want this shared. And so even though it's not a big deal, it really helps where it's a small help versus a giant hindrance, like a giant potential
Yeah.
hindrance, if you will.
Yep.
All right, Kayla, I'm sure you would agree, but we would be remiss if we went on and on about how important trust is in friendship, if we didn't give some ways to repair friendship when trust has been broken. Like, we can't just tell them like, oh, it's so important, and then not tell them how to fix it if something were to happen. So,
Yes.
we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about how to repair trust if it has been broken in your friendship. We'll be right back. All right, so we're back, and we're going to discuss some ways to repair broken trust. And when we go through these, I don't want you guys to think of them as simply like this elementary, middle school girl drama. Okay. There could be
Yes.
there could be some serious effects of broken trust. And I really, really, really don't want friendships or relationships to end because of it. So instead of thinking of like, oh, they're talking about secrets and they're talking about gossip and okay, just try to think outside of the box on this one, not the girl drama, but actually think about how this could be a benefit to you should you have a situation where your trust has been broken in one of your
Yes.
relationships.
And that doesn't always have to look like sharing secrets. It can look like breaking a boundary.
Absolutely. Or showing up 20 minutes late for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Which actually leads us to our first um repair tactic is acknowledge the breach of trust. And you might say, okay, you just showed up late for dinner, that's not that big of a deal. But if I had just showed up and be like, oh yeah, you're fine, that would not have been very respectful. So I was like, dude,
Right.
I am so sorry, it has been such a day, like I'm really sorry and I apologize. And I was like, the first
Yeah.
step in repairing that situation or any situation is to acknowledge that your trust has been broken, whether
Yeah.
that's like a secret breaching kind of thing or a reliability issue. It's just important to be honest about what happened and take responsibility for any actions that of yours that contributed to the breach of trust. Maybe you
Yeah.
feel like your trust has been broken by someone else. Okay, what role did you play in helping that happen? Because it's not just one person's fault all the time. Sometimes it is. But if you just pretend like it didn't happen, or worse, get defensive about the mistake that was made, that you made, or try to blame someone else, you are only going to drive that relationship further apart, and it's going to be much harder to repair it in the future.
Yeah. And if it's a situation where both of you are at fault, then you acknowledging your fault will lead to your friend acknowledging theirs as well because you've broken down your walls, you've taken off your pride. Now your friend is going to be more likely to do so as well.
Yeah, definitely. They might not. They might get defensive. They might stand their ground and
Oh, yeah.
try to fight back. But a healthy relationship is where both people are willing to discuss what happened and take the portion of responsibility that is theirs. All right, our second tip for repairing broken trust is communicate openly. To be clear, Okay,
Yes.
honest about your feelings or whatever, but be very, very clear in your communication to rebuild
Yes.
that trust.
And a script for this clear and honest communication, and this is not original, this is actually stolen from Dear Young Married Couple, is when you say blank, when you do blank, it makes me feel blank because blank. Next time, can you blank?
There you
Which
go.
seems like a big old process to do every single time there's an inconvenience, but it really is effective. And then soon it won't be scripted. Once you've done it quite a few times, it'll be habit.
Absolutely. And our friends over at Dear Young Married Couple absolutely know what they're talking about. So I am totally comfortable borrowing that script from them for this. Um, and so I'm
Yeah.
a teacher, and we have at the site I was just working at what the vice principal calls restorative chats. And I say that in air quotes because that is so like new agey and whatever, but it's got its place. So I'm not trying to judge. But in this situation, all the restorative chats start with I feel this, whatever, to not share blame or not to push blame, I should say.
Mm.
So I feel this because you did that or whatever. So very similar to the script. Um, to have that conversation about what happened, how it made the person feel, what needs to happen moving forward. So person A says how they feel and uses the script. Kayla, can you say that one more time for us?
Yeah. When you do this or when you say this, it makes me feel blank because blank. Next time, can you do blank? That will make me feel blank.
That next time is the key. Talk about
Yeah.
what needs to happen to move forward and when you move forward. The person who feels like the trust has been broken actually explain to the offender what happened and how that made you feel, and offender try to understand, be okay with having this conversation, don't get defensive about it, uh, try to see things from their point of view and acknowledge that you made a mistake or explain why you feel like you didn't make a mistake, because that's an
Yep.
equally as important part of the conversation too, is like, hey, I didn't think it would be a problem because of this. And if they're like, well, it is a problem, then you're like, okay, I'm sorry. And then you
Yeah.
have your basis for how to move forward and most likely avoid a situation like that happening again in the future.
Yes. And when you feel like you're not at fault here, but you still want to make the other person feel seen and heard, you
Mm-hmm.
might say something, you might try repeating it back to them. Obviously, not word for word, but repeating back to them what you said, how it made them feel, and then go on to explain why you felt like it was the right thing to do or say.
Yeah, which actually leads us into our third tip, which is to apologize and make amends.
Yeah.
The sincere apology can go a long way. If you betrayed your friend's trust, it's important to apologize. That's got to be part of your conversation. Uh Sometimes you can make amends, sometimes you can't, but even amends could be simply expressing your regret and asking for forgiveness. If you just say, I'm sorry, but and if you can't, retroactively go back and fix the situation, you're making amends could be asking for forgiveness.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us that we need to forgive, and we tend to focus on when Peter asked Jesus how many times we have to forgive someone. But James 5:16 says, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much, which means we need to recognize that we need to be forgiven and ask for it. Confess your faults. Like, I am so sorry that I did this. That's part of the acknowledging what happened. You got to recognize that you need to be forgiven when you've broken trust, and not only recognize it but ask for it.
And this might be like a little bit of a rabbit trail, but when Brother Todd Nichols came a couple months ago, right before No Limits, he talked about um, what it really means to repent and how it's not just asking forgiveness. And of course, God forgives right away, but there's got to be action that follows. You got
Mm-hmm.
to live a holy lifestyle after, or
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to be in that constant cycle of not really truly finding healing.
Right.
And in this case, apologizing but not making amends.
Yeah. And then you apologize and you have a repeated instance where you break their trust again. It might not even be in the same format or the same situation, but if you have a successful conversation before about repairing trust, the next time a breach happens, if it was unintentional, you will have that foundation of which to build off of. Or if it's the other person, the person who previously was the offender is now the offended, uh, you'll have that much more empathy and
Yeah.
understanding of where the other person was coming from the first time, and you'll have that building block of how to move forward in the future. And I feel the need to say that broken trust doesn't happen all the time. This is not like a daily occurrence, but if we can put this tool in your pocket about how to take care of it when it does happen, at least you're
Yeah.
prepared, right? And you
Yeah.
and
You'll
you and
be
you got
equipped walking into it.
absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of James chapter 5 super quizzer, you could probably quote that whole thing. That's like one of the
Yeah.
few
It is in
things
the
that I
doctrine
can
material.
yeah, that I can remember like super clearly. There's just a few sets of scriptures that just stand out so clearly from my Bible quizzing days, and that chapter is one of them. But all right, let's move on to number 4.
Okay. Number 4, be consistent. So after you've apologized, you made amends, you need to try your best, because of course we're going to make mistakes, but try your best to be consistent after that, because that's really key in rebuilding trust. And that word rebuilding, I mean, building takes time and building
Mm-hmm.
just happens over time. So being consistent is the key to rebuilding trust. It's important to follow through on any commitments you make and show that you really can be relied upon. And of course, life is going to happen, but try to maintain that image of being a punctual, reliable person. And this can mean, being on time for meetings, following through on promises, and being dependable in other ways.
Absolutely. Consistency, reliability, they kind of go hand in hand. And that was one of our tips earlier for establishing trust as being reliable, and a way to repair it is to be consistent. After you've made your amends, after you've asked for forgiveness, what can you do to prove that you are willing to put in the work to continue to build this friendship how it needs to be built? All right, number 5, our last tip for repairing broken trust is give it some time. It's not going to happen overnight. Like you just said, building takes time, and it's important to be patient. Understand that as you work through this process, it's not going to be the same for both of you, especially since one of you was hurt and one of you was, the person who did it or whatever. Or if it's a friend group, I feel like we're not really talking about broken trust in a friend group. But if you broke the trust of, say, you've got 4 friends that you hang out with consistently, if you broke all their trust, guess what? That's 4 personalities that you have to deal with and contend with for the rebuilding process. It could take several months or even years to fully repair the trust and friendship. But with that effort and commitment, it is possible. And Kayla, you and I are surrounded by a lot of therapists in our life. My
Yeah.
parents, your in-laws,
Mm-hmm. My
have
mom's a
counseling
life
services.
coach.
Yeah, there you
My
go.
sister
Your
is a
sister,
therapist. Yeah.
your brother-in-law, and then of course we've got tons of friends who are in that field,
Yeah.
and so they deal with more like infidelity and that kind of thing, and in marriages. But even in regular friendship, I'll use that term, regular friendship, depending on the severity. And I don't even want to give examples because it's going to be different for everybody. A situation where I feel like, oh man, they shouldn't have done that could be something so much more serious for someone else. So I can't say like, if this happens, it will take years to repair that friendship.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll be different for me. It would even be different for you. Um, but ultimately, repairing broken trust in a friendship requires both parties to be willing to work through the process and commit to rebuilding the relationship.
Yeah, and this can be a really difficult and even emotional process, but it's also an opportunity to deepen the bond between the friends and create a stronger, more resilient friendship.
Absolutely. Resiliency, that it proves that, hey, we fought some battles and we've went through some mountains and through some valleys, and we've come out the other side with a healthy friendship, and trust is crucial. crucial to that,
Right.
to building that strong foundation, to withstand the test of time and different seasons of life and maybe even geographical separations. Trust is really the foundation for that.
Yeah. And should you ever experience broken trust or conflict again, you'll walk into it better equipped because you now have the tools to handle it more effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. You can only be setting yourself up for success with dealing with situations as they happen. If you sweep things under a rug, if you let them simmer, you're just leaving a bigger mess for you to clean up later. So if you can take these tips and suggestions and fit them to how they work for your friendships, I'd like to think that you would be more successful and have that stronger foundation for a healthier, long lasting friendship
Yes. And that's the whole
forever.
goal here.
That is our goal. That is
Yeah.
our goal. All right, Kaylin, next week we are talking about the friendship survey.
Yes. I'm excited for this one, guys.
I am too. And we've been excited for all of them, but you know what? This is a new podcast. And so we're still in that phase where we're excited about everything. But I was texting
Yeah.
Kayla, what, like 5 times last week about how excited I am about this one. Um, before we let you guys go today, we do have this friendship survey, which we're going to be talking about next week. It is still open. I've been accepting replies for the survey for 2 years. And if you're interested in being a part of the results and seeing being a part of the data collection there, you can
Yeah.
find it in our link tree in our Instagram bio. So it's a friendship survey. It takes no more than 5 minutes. You're answering a few questions on a Likert scale. That's a 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree scale, and just giving some feedback about what you think about friendship. And we are going to be talking about those results next week. And it's very interesting. So I'm super stoked about that.
Yes. We'll also link it in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Help us contribute to these numbers, guys.
All right, guys, that's all for this week. We'll see you next week.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.